Hey, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to welcome our speaker for tonight. It's our colleague, Mathew Zacharias, and he's talking on Musings of a Philatelist. So I won't tell you what it's about, but it sounds quite intriguing. Mathew.
Thank you very much. I didn't mind waiting at all. I waited 80 years to give this talk. Right. Philatelist is basically study of stamps and collect them and study them and find out why they made the stamp, all those kind of details. Philatelist is the person or an idiot who wastes a lot of time and money on it, and I'm one of them. My stamp collection started when I was in the high school. My father used to collect it, and being the eldest son, he gave me all the stamps. There were well over 1,000 at that time. I made it to about 2,500 stamps, some very, very rare ones, like a half Anna, Queen Victoria one, and King George one again, very rare stamps. Some of them cost about 50,000 Indian rupees now. And I went to medical school and kept all of it in my cupboard and locked it up, and came back at the end of the year. I came back for a holiday and looked for it, and then it wasn't there. So I wonder what happened. Then what happened was my brother, youngest brother, decided to give it to charity. Okay, so I started collecting again when I came to New Zealand in 1985. I have actually lots of stamps, but I haven't put it out in any particular format. I had about 7 kilograms of stamps in those. So yeah, I got about 7 kilograms of stamps. I'm waiting for a good time to start putting it together again. Now, one miserable winter last year, I was going through a catalog. I have access to a lot of catalogs of it. And I found this particular stamp produced by, made from India. Indian government doesn't produce stamps of foreigners unless there is a real good reason. In fact, hardly any. And so I wanted to know why they produced a stamp of Ronald Rose. Then I looked around and found that a lot of countries had the same person in our stamps. For example, Norway has it, Sweden has it, Guinea-Bissau has it, and a lot of places have it, and a few others too, all related to malaria. And of course, stamps are produced by a lot of countries. Some countries use it to make money. If you go to Kiribati, there are hardly few thousand people there, but they produce beautiful stamps because they expect people to come there, get a card and send it home with these wonderful stamps. But that is not very valuable, really. But some of these rare stamps are very valuable. So I searched more about Rose, and it is very confusing in Google. So I use ChatGPT. I thought I'll update myself to do something newish. I'm an old-fashioned person. And I found that it is very friendly, got a lot of references, and they mentioned a particular book about Ronald Rose. It's available in the library here, and that's the book, written by no less a person than Ted Nye and Mrs. Gibson, who is a librarian in Leeds. So I got all of the book, and the title was Sir Ronald Rose, malariologist and polymath. Polymath is a person who is expert in a lot of things and with wide knowledge. This comes from the Greek word polymathis. I think that's Greek, it is written there. Now, Ted Nye, in my view, is a polymath. I know he's a physician. I talked to him a few times, but I didn't know he was an entomologist. And only Janet told me that he used to be involved in fencing. And of course, I know he's a thorough gentleman. So I can call him a polymath. And I went to the museum to get some of the photographs of his collection of mosquitoes. And they have a beautiful write-up about him after his death. It gives a very moving comment about his involvement with the library, with the museum. And in fact, he was an honorary curator in the museum, and they call it honorary curator of pointy things that draw blood, obviously referring to the mosquitoes. This is part of his collection from all around the South Pacific and other places. And of course, New Zealand. I didn't know New Zealand had a total number of that many mosquitoes. Apparently, they are all different species. You must have worked very hard to get them. And if you look at the mosquitoes, mounting anything small, it is a very difficult job. Because I tried to do butterflies when I was in the school. We had a lot of butterflies in India. But it is very, very demanding job. Mosquitoes, they are actually 100-million-year-old terror. There are something like 3,500 species of mosquitoes, and about 390 odd are in India. Females actually feed on the blood because they need the blood to reproduce. Males just sing and drive you nuts at night. And that is a wonderful painting done some hundreds of years ago about somebody suffering from mosquitoes, not from mosquito bites, trying to prevent it. There are three important types of mosquitoes we need to know. One is Anopheles, one is Aedes, and one is Culex. They transfer a lot of infections. The colorful one is the Aedes. We could identify these mosquitoes because they come and sit on a wall before they jump and bite you, and then go back and sit there again. That's how they behave. So by simply looking at them, we could identify them. The Anopheles one, which is the mosquito transferring one, has got the tail is pointing upwards, whereas the other ones are flatter. My contact is, it was there in my part of the world when I was a young boy, but not very common. In fact, one of my uncles, who used to be basically a jovial person, always sing something or the other, he used to have a song. Says that if you live up in the hill, in my language, of course, if you live up in the hills, you get malaria. Drink, 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 drink quinine. Quinine is quinine. That means it was quite common in those days around that. And as a little boy, I can remember people coming and spraying DDT all around the house, inside, in the classrooms, a couple of times a year. The reason is that DDT stays there for a long time, and mosquitoes come and rest there first, and then goes and drinks blood and goes back again. So it kills the mosquitoes. That's the principle of it. But unfortunately, we all used to go and sniff it. Oh, nice smell when these things are sprayed there. But nobody knew that it was really bad. At least we didn't know about it. My village never had a case of cancer until about 20 years ago. And now about 20% of the people in my village have cancer, which I think it is due to the spray of these kind of things. And of course, weed killers. They started using it about 40 years ago. And they also spray a kind of oily substance in wherever there is collected water. The reason being these things develop in the water, and they have got a little tail which goes up and breathes air and comes down. But if there is oily spray on it, or oil collected over it, they can't breathe, so they die. But we had natural way of getting rid of them. We had frogs, thousands of them, tadpoles, fish, lizards on the walls. And top it up, every morning and evening, we used to have open fireplace to cook things. So there is always smoke around the house in the morning and evening. That's the time mosquitoes come out. If you go to a big camp, like an army camp that I went there quite a lot of times, they spray in the morning and in the evening, go around and spray all the smoke all the places with just simple smoke or some chemicals in it. What it does is it kills the mosquitoes. So that's the time that mosquitoes come out. We also probably had herd immunity because not many people had it at that time. If you look at the history, ancient Roman and Greek had it. Certainly it was in England. William Bligh reports it from the Pacific Islands. He noted that there is a kind of bark of a tree which they gave it to people so that it cured them. Again, from the Peru, there were reports of something called Jesuit's bark, which basically happened to be cinchona tree bark. Which quinine comes from cinchona bark. Cinchona trees were introduced in India in 1859 by the British. There are hundreds of malaria is transmitted by Anopheles mosquitoes. They only can carry it. It takes about 7 days for them to lay egg and go through the larval phase and nymph and then become an adult. 7 to 8 days. That's all it takes. Sometimes even shorter. But it's very host specific. In that only certain type of Anopheles can transfer malaria into people. A certain type of mosquito, Anopheles mosquito can transmit malaria into birds and that kind of way. This is Plasmodium, of course. There is falciparum, which is actually the dreadful variety of malaria. Plasmodium vivax, ovale, and malaria. They are recurrent malaria. Generally, these days, what people do is take doxycycline every day kind of thing. That's what the New Zealand Army uses. And I worked with the medicine center one year, and they also recommend this one wherever they work in a malaria place. Take it every day, 1 dose, and that's it. You can treat it with chloroquine, quinine, or artemisinin, which is a newer term. This is the cycle. Basically, the mosquito collects, bite the person, gets the blood, which has got male and female bits of it, and then develops within the mosquito, and then it bites a human being, and then it goes into the person's liver and multiplies like hundreds and hundreds of times. And that is released into the blood every 2 or 3 days, and you get the fever. But some of them turn out to be male or female ones, and that is being sucked up again by the mosquito when a mosquito bites the person again. So it goes in a cycle. Now, this is a photograph of Kerala where I come from. It's a very ancient photograph, drawing of the place. The Anopheles mosquitoes are seen in that starred area up in the hills. That's the hilly area. But in the sea, near the sea level, or lower down, you get more of Culex mosquitoes, and they actually spread filariasis. If you even it's less now, but it used to be a lot of filarial infections, like people having huge big legs or huge big scrotums because of the filarial fluid accumulating there. I come from the central part of the state, and we have dengue, and these days they have started having chikungunya and Zika virus and things like that. But basically, dengue is the one which mainly transmitted by Aedes. It was not a big problem in the medical school for me, but we had to go and collect blood whenever the patient spiked a fever to find the organisms in it, the Plasmodium. When I worked in East Timor, we had a huge rate of malaria there. 85% of the children had malaria at that time. And some of them were falciparum, which actually gives cerebral malaria. Very difficult to control. We didn't have very many drugs either. But we had quinine, which is very cardiotoxic drug, but we managed to give it under very careful circumstances. In northern Nigeria, again, when I worked there, we had malaria, and they were very poor people, and they had frequent pregnancies for the women. I worked in a maternity center, and they're already very anemic. The hemoglobin level was 4 or 5 or things like that, not low. And then they had a frequent pregnancy, hemoglobin goes down again. Then they have malaria, that brings down the hemoglobin further. So it was a huge, big challenge to deal with that. Luckily, we had enough medications to deal with that. Then I worked in Pakistan and Yemen. They all had malaria as a problem. Now, turning to India, India attracted visitors. Before Christ, the people from Middle East used to come there. It takes only about 7 days in a sail ship, with old-fashioned sail ship, to come across from Middle East to my part of the world. I live in the southern tip of India, on the west side, and it is very easy for just trade winds take people this way and that way. So they used to come there, and Christianity came to the same place where I come from. In 64 AD, St. Thomas brought it there. Again, because of the fact that the ships used to go for trading purposes that way and this way. Then the Europeans came. That's when the trouble started. Vasco da Gama first came, that is the start of the Portuguese. Portuguese just bought the spices, and they decided to improve over Christianity as if we didn't know anything about it. Anyway, they built a lot of churches. This is my parish church. They built about 280 or 300 years ago. It is solid as a rock. And they have beautiful paintings inside. It's all done by the Portuguese. Dutch and French came, and they were kind of outmaneuvered by British. British came and they did a lot of things. What did they do? To start with, we had about 200 or 300 small little kingdoms. They got all of them, got rid of all of them, and gave them some money and made them sit in their palace, and made India a big part of their country, British India. That included current Pakistan, Burma, Ceylon, and India. And if you go to the history, somebody worked out a few years ago what Britain really did, or British Empire really did to India. In 200 years, it is calculated they took something like 50 trillion pounds worth of assets from India, stripped that, took it to Britain. But they didn't apologize yet. Now, coming to Ronald Rose, he was born in a place up in the Himalayan area, place called Almora. This is the photo. Now, I've never been there. I got it from the internet. He belongs to the clan Rose. They settled in Ayrshire, and all the Roses for generations worked in India, either as trade or in the army. Father was Campbell Rose, and he was Campbell in the British Native Infantry, married Matilda, and they had 10 children. Rose was the eldest. They all survived except one. Rose was born in 1857. 1857 is a very important year in British history, in Indian history. Now, that is when the Great Indian Mutiny happened. A lot of people died in that. Lucky for Roses, they had a regiment of Gurkha soldiers there. Gurkhas are the most loyal soldiers you can ever find. So much so, the British had the Gurkha regiment until about 3 or 4 years ago. I think they ran out of money, so they kind of dismantled the unit now. But they are very, very good soldiers because PA is fighting unit. In fact, Gurkhas, Sikhs, and Pathans are the best fighting forces ever. We call it Sepoy Revolution because what happened in that one was the British, the English suddenly changed the oil to lubricate the gun, the muskets. And when they changed it, the news spread that it is oil from the pigs. And the Muslim soldiers found it very offensive to touch anything from pig. Then they changed the story and said, oh, this is from cows. The oil comes from cow fat. And the Hindus hate killing cows. So both Hindus and Muslims got really angry and they went on the riot and killed 6,000 of the 40,000 British soldiers they were. And families, of course. That was a real massacre. So the British reacted with vengeance. And they killed 800,000 Indians were murdered in 2 years. This is a little known history because it has been under the wrap for a long while. In fact, they killed them in every possible way, shot them, cut their head off, burned them, and even put them in front of the cannons and fired the cannons. It was pretty cruel. So if you look back, those who have got ancestry from Britain, there's always something in your cover. Ross, when he was 8, went to England for schooling and stayed with his uncle. He was a retired doctor, very hard disciplinarian, but he was not a very good student. He just read and read and read all the books in his library. And they went to Southampton for boarding school, but he liked only poetry and maths and not interested in other subjects. And he was not a very healthy person either. So he wanted to become an artist when he finished the school, but his father decided he's going to be a doctor in the Indian Army. That's it. He had no choice. So he joined St. Bartholomew's, but as a medical student, he was not very good. He was interested in literature and art mostly, but he passed his surgical part of the exam. He failed in medicine. So he had to make up the time, so he became a ship surgeon. They could do the surgery, but they couldn't do anything else. So he was a ship surgeon for a couple of years between Southampton and America. And finally, he got his medical paper from Society of Apothecaries. So he joined Indian Medical Service in 1881, age of 24. And he did some training in military medicine, basically tropical medicine, because there are every possible diseases, malaria, tuberculosis, cholera, all these kinds, and worms, all these kinds are there in India. And they were there in India. They are still there in India. Though we went to India. Reached Madras and got posting all around. All those, that photograph shows a lot of places he has been to, posted here and there. So he had a great time, lots of tennis, riding. He went to morning clinic, but in the afternoon he had a pony trap and he visited around all the places. And he spent a lot of time playing piano, composing music, writing stories, and more of mathematics. And every year, of course, they got time off to go on holidays to India. So up to Britain. So he went to England and did a diploma in bacteriology. So went back to Madras and decided to become research worker on malaria. And then he married and had 4 children. Even though he had a microscope, he couldn't really find any parasites, malaria parasites in the blood. I'm not surprised because staining was not in fashion. They used the sample of blood under the microscope and looked at it, and it's very difficult to see them because unless you stain it, the staining technology or staining method was developed a few years later. So he struggled to find anything there. He went to for a holiday with his family in 1894. That was an important time for him. Something important happened when he went there. By the way, this is the man who invented the yosin imetoxylin stain, which made a lot of difference in seeing things under a microscope. In fact, as a house surgeon in my medical school, we all had to do all the bloods and all the samples ourselves. There wasn't anybody to do anything for us in the pathology except somebody show you something, ask somebody some doubt if you have any. So we had to do all the bloods and look for all these kind of things, malaria, blood counts, and then looking for tuberculosis bacilli. We had to do all this ourselves. So I'm pretty used to doing all this. Now, Sir Patrick Manson, I'm sure anybody interested in tropical medicine knows Patrick Manson. He has written a book on a very important book on tropical diseases. It is my Bible. I read it at least 3 or 4 times, that one. Everything, if you go to any developing or underdeveloped country in the tropics, you go to read this book because it tells you how to deal with the patients. It describes in beautiful terms everything about you want to know about a disease. He studied in Aberdeen School and at 22 he became a doctor, including writing an MD thesis. He went to China or Formosa, which is Taiwan, started doing research on filariasis. He actually observed microfilaria in the blood of patients and postulated that mosquitoes are the carriers. He was a very clever man. What he did was he kept a person in a tent with a herd of mosquitoes to attack him. And then he got dissected the mosquitoes every day and noticed that they were developing the larvae within mosquitoes after a few days, and showed that the larva migrated in the mosquito. So he published that in 1883 and established that mosquitoes transmitted filariasis. And he also suggested probably mosquitoes are the cause for malarial transmission. But all the studies around that time, Manson or other people, they all believe that either air or water was the way of transmission, the final transmission. So they thought that the mosquitoes laid the egg in the water and you drank the water and you get malaria or malaria, whatever. Manson also did, for example, there is a Campania Romana. It's a place near, I've never been there, but somewhere near Rome. They had a lot of malaria there because it was a swamp-like area. So he kept 3 volunteers in a sealed house for a few days and noticed that none of them got any malaria because it was sealed and mosquitoes were not coming into that place. So he decided that somebody should study the importance of malaria, mosquito and malaria in India. Now, but he decided that probably being a patriotic person or being a racist, he decided that only an Englishman should study that because he always believed that British superiority in everything. Manson at that time met Rose and showed him slides of malarial parasite in patient's blood in various forms. Then finally he clicked to Rose that, okay, there is something to look into this. So he was all excited to go and do the work in India. Manson really encouraged him to push with the work, looking for malaria, way of transmission in malaria. Just to stop there for a second. There are a lot of other people working with malaria at that time. Mosquitoes and malaria. One was Alfonso Lebrun, French physician. He postulated this theory in 1989. He got Nobel Prize for that work later. And Golgi again showed that plasmodium in the various forms within the blood. And then there's somebody called Giovanni Grazzi. He was an Italian. He actually infected healthy people with malaria using mosquitoes. He published that again. He was a zoologist, so it's easy for him to identify the mosquitoes that cause the problem. So there is some kind of competition between all these people in Italy and in France and in India and in Britain, trying to break the unknown about how the mosquito transmit the malaria. And Rose had a portable laboratory. He carried it everywhere. So armed with a portable microscope and other accessories, he boarded the ship. So he returned there. On the way, he examined all the passengers' bloods, looking for malaria, stopped at every port and went to the hospital and again examined the patients there, looking for these malarial parasites. And when he had time, he even dissected cockroaches in the ship. Has anybody dissected a cockroach? We had to do that in the pre-medical course. We had to dissect frogs, cockroaches, and earthworms. No idea why he had to do it. Anyway, we did that. It's very difficult to dissect a cockroach, let alone a mosquito. Too small. As soon as he landed in Bombay, he went to local hospital and checked the patient's blood and identified malaria parasites there. Now he has become an expert in it. He aimed to find a malaria-infected patient and he wanted mosquitoes to feed on them. But he still couldn't find out which type of mosquitoes really need to be studied. And he couldn't identify different stages of the parasite in the blood. We are still in a infantile stage of studies. But he communicated with Manson regularly. Every 3 or 6 weeks, he could write a letter or get a letter. So the ships would come to Bombay, and then we had mail express trains to all the cities like Madras Mail and Delhi Mail and Calcutta Mail. They are very fast trains there. In fact, I traveled in all of them. It is an easy way of getting around in India. Rose now was firmly under the belief that mosquitoes are the problem, but he insisted on that drinking contaminated water was the cause. In fact, he got a few volunteers and made them drink water with dead mosquitoes in it. But sadly for Rose, none of them got any malaria. He even tried to do a mathematical equation to explain why he couldn't reproduce the malaria in them, but that is failure. One day he decided to give a medical presentation to a group of doctors and show them malaria parasites. So he brought in a patient in a Ebola card from somewhere, but unfortunately he couldn't find any parasite in the person. It's like a slide suddenly missing in your talk kind of thing. He got kind of sidetracked and went and for a holiday, which is Ooty. Ooty is a very mountainous place It's only about a couple of 100 kilometers from where I live. Wonderful, beautiful place, good weather. In fact, the British used to have a holiday resort there, and they had an army resort, army camp there too, because of the good weather there. He went to Ooty, but in spite of taking quinine prophylaxis, he got malaria. He just self-treated by taking more quinine. Then he returned to Hyderabad and nearly died of cholera because there was a big outbreak of cholera in the officers' mess. He self-treated again by drinking lots of hot tea. So he got frustrated by moving around. So he complained to Person Manson for lack of research time. Manson was very kind. He actually wrote to the head of the Indian office and wrote time for write a powerful letter and wrote especially got rose posted to areas where there are mosquitoes. So now actually Ross started spending time finding out the actual vector. He had mosquito farm. He tried different mosquitoes. He tried Culex, no result from that. He farmed Aedes mosquitoes. Again, no malaria came out of it. So he concentrated on Anopheles mosquitoes. And he had in his farm, they all developed, emerged from the pupa around 16th of August on that 1897. So Rose promised a patient with malaria, Mr. Khan, that he would pay him 1 anna if he can get a fully engorged mosquito. Mosquitoes drink blood many times, and they become about 3 or 4 times the size by drinking all that blood. So after about 20 minutes, Mr. Khan came out and he got 10 annas. Obviously, there were a few fully engorged mosquitoes. They were actually doppel-winged, identified as Anopheles. He dissected them every day, one at a time, of course. On the day 3, he noticed special cells in the stomach of mosquitoes. The day fourth day, the last mosquito was dissected and he found many large cells in the stomach wall. They migrated into the womb. That was a eureka moment for me. Being a poet, Ross immediately wrote a poem. And try and play a song. That's the same.
This day relenting God hath placed within my hands a wondrous thing, and God be praised. At his command, seeking his secret deeds, with tears and toiling breath I find thy cunning seeds, O million murdering death. I know this little thing a myriad men will save, O death, where is thy sting? Thy victory, O grave!
I used an artificial intelligence program for this to make this one into a music. I just got it from the shelf, like you can make any number of them. I do write poems, by the way, and I recently converted many of them into music. You can do it very well without knowing anything about this. Now, Ross published the results. First he wrote to Manson and then published the results in Indian Medical Gazette and in BMJ by the end of the year. That is his publication about what he found. But he had to have a final step in that, because all that is that he found that it isn't a mosquito. He had to somehow make it go into the person. or into a patient to cause the malaria. So Manson at this time warned that there is somebody called McCallum in the United States who identified Plasmodium in the birds. So then Rose got interested in that. He started studying malaria in the birds. So in June 1998, Rose studied mosquitoes fed on infected birds. And look at the development. On the 7th day, he found parasites in the mosquito salivary glands. That means he completed that circle. And then he managed to get 2 healthy birds, a sparrow and a weaver, and set them with a group of lot of mosquitoes. Both birds were infected within 1 week and showed Plasmodium in their bloods. That means he completed the circle of how this is transmitted. So he actually established the complete circle, reported this to Manson very soon after. So without testing further humans, Ross proved that mosquitoes transmit malaria. Now, he read a BMG article that there is something called Nobel Prize, so it attracted Ross. So he contacted the Council of Norway and Sweden. They were one at that time, and nominated himself. But the rule was that somebody who already got Nobel Prize had to nominate him, plus the faculty in Karolinska. So Ross was nominated a couple of years, and finally in 1902, the finalists were Ross, Pavlov, and Princeton. They all got Nobel later. But Ross was selected to receive the prize in 1902. This is his, his photo, and the check he got about 141,000 krona, which I think is about 6,700 pounds or something. There are some dirty things about which happened around that time. Rose had a dirty campaign. He ran a dirty campaign against Grassi. He was convinced that Grassi stole his idea, and Manson actually helped him to do that. So he was angry with both of them. Andy Rose went and canvassed a lot of people, the second day particularly, to put his name forward as the candidate. He was so angry with Manson with the belief that he was behind all this. He never met him after that. Considering that Manson was his guide and strong supporter all through his career, is somewhat disappointing. Okay, I'll change the topic now. Ross has a poem. I'm not going to read it out, and you can get the interpretation later. You need to look for the time too. This poem about the fever. The fever is burning, breath is hot, the pulse is quick and high, and the weary head and aching limbs is helpless and is lie. It shows his empathy to somebody who has got fever. And the mosquito, oh tiny insect, poised on airy wing, thou art the subtle instrument of fate. The bite can cause a peasant or the king to tremble at the thought of future state. It depicts unpredictability and interconnection with another living creature. And we got some novels, the child version, Jedward Brothers, Rebels of Crumb, his memoirs. Now, I got a bits and pieces to read this memoir because it's not available anywhere. We got a lot of poems, philosophies, fables, emigrants, and he got a lot of sonatas. Sonatas is a short poem. He was very interested in that one. Some of the work he had. Oh, so if you look at this, then he invites us into the mind of a scientist, viewing the world through analytical and artistic terms. His poetry resonates his lyrical beauty, the emotional depth, and the explanation of the human condition. He showed us how to bridge the gap between literature and medicine. brings a holistic approach of understanding the human experience and its interaction with non-human creatures. So in summary, renowned race deserves credit for the single-minded perseverance of his aim in medical research. He certainly stepped over many people, including his own mentor, Sir Patrick Mason. Did he deserve all the credit he received? Perhaps not, but why not? He worked for it. He certainly was a genuine poet, able to express emotions of the human soul. That, folks, is a successful end of a Philatelist quest. This 2 rupee stamp, which costs about 5 cents, commemorates 100 years since a breakthrough in the malaria research. And India deservedly given him the credit for that. Acknowledgement. Ted Nye was an outstanding book. It really is worthwhile reading it. It must have taken years of work to do that. Janet, thank you very much indeed for the photos and details about Ted. Sometimes I feel probably I should study about Ted and see what all things he did. And the museum for the photos of this mosquito collection. Thank you very much. If you have got a couple of minutes, this is one of the poems. I had a place in the Otago Peninsula, and I could sit and enjoy myself, especially on the weekend. So the title of the poem is "So and So the Crib." I'll see whether tell me if it is mine.
I sat in my chair on a lazy Sunday afternoon, looking through the window towards a wild and windy sea and the choppy waters of the harbor. The wind pushed the stormy seas towards the rugged shores of my little old crib, hidden in the bushes far from anyone's prying eyes.
That's enough. Poem is fine, but it is song by artificial intelligence. Thank you very much indeed.
Questions, I'm sure. Can you tell us what happened to Ronald Ross after he made the discovery? What did he do for the rest of his life? Was he still working as a...
No, he left India pretty soon. He went and took a position and established a school of tropical medicine in Leeds, and he was involved high stakes medical politics after that. Yeah, he was there for a long while.
In India? Or
No, he went back to Britain.
to Britain?
He actually left very soon after getting this sorted out. And because he became Nobel laureate, so he had high positions. So he established I think it is Leeds, I think they have a collegial, he established, it's not there anymore, but a research center come hospital for tropical diseases.
Very much, Matt. Very interesting talk. You are a reader of obviously. What is it's only the female anomalous who's transmitting the disease. Is that correct?
That's right.
Why is that?
Because they need the blood to lay the eggs. So they have to drink blood. Males, we have no particular function. We just produce the babies and walk away, sing. But they have to produce the egg, so they have to have blood to have the eggs coming out. That's the only reason they go around. That's something they adapted like that. Some mosquitoes drink fruit juices. So it's not every mosquito gets the blood out here. There are Some mosquitoes bring bite other animals. Some just goes around the fruits.
But a nail doesn't sting you.
No, they don't. They kill you by singing to you. Have you, no,
No, that's
if you put your mosquito net, but they sing out, they fly around and sing and made you miserable, make you miserable.
not really good.
I'm sure you're familiar with that.
The other question is, I mean, our areas in tropical countries, what's the relationship with temperatures? So, I've lived in countries higher up. If you're in altitude, you don't get malaria because it would be the most peaceful kind of in under certain temperatures.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm sure it matters. I showed you the photo of what happens in Kerala, where I come from. You get one type of diseases near the sea level, another one in the up the mountains, or something in the middle. It all depends on the on temperature matters, but availability of water, for example, you need pools of water for them to. They are incredible creatures. For example, my brother. Can I say a story? My brother was in Singapore. No, one of my nephews was in Singapore. And he had left his house, locked it up for about 3 weeks or something. And then they have this, the public health system is so good, they track mosquitoes. They found a mosquito and tracked a group of mosquitoes to his toilet, because they were breeding in his toilet. So all that need is a bit of water anyway. They come out of. And we have a lot of rubber plantations in Kerala, where I come from, and they collect the rubber, the latex in a shell, coconut shell, and they leave it there after getting the sap off. And water collects there is rain, and all that need is a week. The mosquitoes lay the egg, the stuff comes out, the things are formed there, and they fly out within sometimes about 4 days. So it is very easy for them to water. So water, temperature, too hot weather is probably not a great idea. And too cold weather is probably worse. We don't get mosquitoes here. Don't know that. But up in the north, apparently you can get it. Never been bitten by a mosquito in this country.
Is in the 19th response to the message.
No, I haven't read that part of it. And Ted Nye in his book tactfully avoided that bit. No doubt thought he probably had a word or two to say about it. Because he was looking forward to getting something. That's why he persuaded Ross. Manson had his private practice and he was getting old. So he wanted a share of the Nobel Prize. So that's why he was pushing Ross to do that. But Ross completely sidetracked him and didn't recommend him for anything. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, please join me. Thank you. Thank you.